the police that are parked up in the parking lot, because I'll just go talk to him when I get there. He goes, no. He says, I think they're like from like the FBI office, which could mean it is the Cobra special ops people are interested in talking to us. I don't know if that's a fact, but we did do a report on Cobra, so maybe they want to talk to us. That'll be interesting. Needless to say, I want to file this report before we go up there, because we're about to head back up and get some equipment and then head over to Josh's place. And if something should happen, I just want people to know that the police here in Telfs, that's for the big buildup for the G20, are here, and they're asking for me by name, and it has to do with YouTube videos, is what I was told. So with that, Josh is driving around right now so we could file this and upload it. We're down in the Telfs downtown area because they have better cellular bandwidth. And so we're going to file this report, and we'll let you know what happens after I talk to him. Also, we did shoot 2 other reports. We went and interviewed people in Telfs to find out what they thought about Bilderberg. Some people knew about it. I was very surprised. Some people that knew, some people didn't. We even met an American who's living here in Australia. So that report's going to be coming up. And then we Austria, you got it. Yeah, I don't know why. Sometimes I say Australia. It just rolls off the tongue better. In fact, somebody said that in the comments. Well, they said, when you tell people you're going to Austria, they'll say, I've always wanted to go to Australia. I think it's just the way they sound together. But anyway, we also have another report that we shot about the Bilderberg attendees in the sculpture garden. It's got some really neat metal sculptures. And then, I'm standing next to certain ones talking about some of the attendees that are going to be there. I think the 3 biggest power groups are the media group, the technology group, and then the royalty politic group that will be there for this year's 2015 Bilderberg in Telfs, Austria. And at the Interalpen Hotel, which is right up the road from where we're at now. And once again, the police were looking for me by name. They went to the hotel. And one last thing the manager said, he said, don't be alarmed if they come back at night. Well, I'm going to be definitely alarmed if the police come at night to our little apartment log cabin, because it is not near any main road, and it's definitely going to freak me out. So I hope that doesn't happen. But you never know. We'll see. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just here reporting on the fact that elites are getting together in secret, and the people here are going to have to pay for the security, the massive security apparatus with their tax dollars. So stay tuned for more reports. It's been Rob Dew for INFOWARS.com and INFOWARS Nightly News.
Now, I'm not a real big fan of Chris Christie, but I am a fan of what he's done recently when he pardoned Stefan Josie Davis. This was a young man who was a security guard, trained in firearms, proficient in firearms. And one day he put a firearm into his glove box. He was driving down the road, got pulled over by an officer. He was trying to be responsible, trying to be respectful. He said, hey, officer, I have a firearm in my glove box. I'll surrender it to you now and pick it up at the station later if it's any type of a hassle. The officer says, no problem, takes the firearm, goes away. And lo and behold, Stefan is charged with a felony. And they said you can either plead to the charge or you can face some rather stiff penalties if you try to fight this thing out in court. So he pled to the charge. Now, nobody wants to be charged with a felony, especially if you have ambitions to be a police officer, as Stefan did. So it pretty much ruined his career. Anybody who's out there knows it's a very tough job market, regardless of your education. If you have a lot of education, you may have a whole lot of student loan debt to go along with it. So he looked around to various organizations. People came to his aid, various gun groups, NRA, as well as many others, which I'm very happy to hear about. And I'll let you hear what Stefan had to say when he went to seek some aid from the NAACP and some other black organizations.
I obviously didn't fit their agenda, like I told you, and it's just
their agenda was
Black Lives Matter, but they don't matter here because I wasn't being shot by a police officer or being beat up by a police officer. Al Sharpton and all the rest of the organizations, they just are not willing to help, and it's just sad because a young black man that's coming from these communities, why are they not inside the communities helping out and getting young black officers in there?
Now, I'm not trying to bash the NAACP. They do a lot of good things, but as Stefan pointed out, if it's something outside of their agenda, they don't want to fight for gun rights. So even though there's a black man who's having his career ambitions dashed, they chose not to get involved in this particular incident. So I'm very happy for you, Stefan, and hope to see you patrolling your community with some good, competent policing. You can find more reports on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube.
satisfied with laser weapons that are both invisible and silent. Companies like Boeing have announced that they're going to be taking their laser weapons to the next level. Previously, operators have had to pay close attention to know exactly when they've been firing these silent but deadly weapons. Now their lasers will be equipped with Star Trek and Star Wars sound effects. So next time Boeing's high-energy laser mobile demonstrator shoots down a drone mid-flight, it's going to sound exactly like Han Solo's blaster. But that isn't all that science fiction has influenced. In addition to cell phones and ion propulsion and handheld devices, Star Trek and Star Wars have also influenced futurists like Ray Kurzweil. Kurzweil is once again repeating his prediction that humans will meld with computers in the future. But instead of 2045, Kurzweil is now suggesting cyborgs will be a reality by the 2030s. The director of engineering at Google said that people will soon be able to connect their brains directly to the cloud and augment their existing intelligence with thousands of computers. Thanks to DNA nanobots making the connection, our thinking will become a hybrid of biological and non-biological thinking. Kurzweil adds that by the early 2040s, people will be more like machines than they will be human. And he even suggests that we'll be able to back up our brains like a hard drive. But guess what? Star Trek already conquered this territory in the 90s.
I am the Borg.
The cyborg represents the dark side of humanity, what happens when technology falls into the wrong hands and is used to dehumanize us. The Star Trek Borgs became one with their technology. It stripped them of their humanity and their individuality. They became like zombies in a metal shell. They were now part of a collective network on a vast computer system controlled telepathically by this mysterious Borg queen. Kind of makes you think there's a possibility something could be telepathically controlling us if we ever were to upload our brains to the cloud, as Kurzweil suggests.
Assimilate this.
And even though we hear the word singularity by 2045, the fact is, man merging with machine has already happened. Professor Kevin Warwick is head of the Cybernetics and Robotics Department at Reading University in the UK. In 1998, he was able to connect his nervous system to the internet via a chip implanted in his arm. He then used the web to allow him to control a robotic arm. And that was in the 90s. And he, like Kurzweil and other transhumanists, give this ominous warning that by not upgrading, we would be considered subspecies in the future. And surprise, surprise, artificial intelligence is one of the topics up for discussion at this year's Bilderberg conference. Former DARPA director and now Google exec Regina Dugan will be in attendance. Dugan is helping to develop and promote the idea of an ingestible identification microchip. Yeah, absolutely not worrisome at all that Google is now hiring military leadership. Users would swallow a chip in pill form every day in order to obtain the superpower of having their entire body act as a biological password for cell phones, cars, doors, and other devices. But I'm sure it means absolutely nothing that artificial intelligence will be discussed this week at a top secret meeting of the world's power brokers, when people like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking have warned that artificial intelligence has the potential to destroy humanity if it falls in the wrong hands.
I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
You know, people don't remember, when I came into office, the United States, in world opinion, ranked below China and just barely above Russia. And today, once again, the United States is the most respected country on earth. And part of that, I think, is because of the work that we did to re-engage the world and say that we want to work with you as partners with mutual interest and mutual respect.
He's just wrong, flat wrong and delusional, which appears to have become the norm for U.S. presidents since Richard Nixon completely transformed the office into a den of iniquity. If he had seen the poll, his aides must have given it to him upside down. In February of 2014, a Gallup poll revealed that for the first time, the majority of Americans at 53% agreed that President Obama is not respected by other world leaders. Obama's aides probably shredded the 2014 BBC poll showing that the U.S. is 7th in mainly negative ratings under China, Russia, Israel, Pakistan, North Korea, and Iran at number 1. Maybe Obama is confusing corporate leaders with world leaders. He recently made the Brazilian and German leaders furious when it was revealed that they had been personally spied on.
I have made it clear to the President of the United States that spying on friends is not acceptable at all. I said that when he was in Berlin in July and also yesterday in a telephone call. It's not just about me, but about every German citizen.
Citizens' personal data and information have been indiscriminately targeted and intercepted. Business information, oftentimes of high economic and even strategic value, have been the target of spying activity.
We're able to end 2 wars while still focusing on the very real threat of terrorism and to try to work with our partners on the ground in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
What do you make of even Bloomberg reporting that basically the U.S. is working with al-Qaeda to take over Iraq? I mean, this is insane, and take over areas of Syria.
No, it was clear. This whole operation was it started with getting rid of Saddam and then Gaddafi in Libya and now Assad in Syria, Yemen, now a mess, a civil war. All those governments were secular, and now we run the risk of them being replaced by these Salafist regimes, where, as you say, they not only kill Shias, other Sunni Muslims, Christians, and other minorities, but also destroy antiquities, priceless, irreplaceable World Heritage sites.
Execute women if they get caught not wearing gloves. I mean, give me a break, man. Our government's funding people that sexually mutilate women and make them wear gloves. I mean, I'm done. I'm done with the scum that runs our government.
Was the airdrop of weapons and supplies to ISIS really a mistake? After all, it's always been the ultimate goal of the United States and its allies to put boots on the ground in Syria and to remove al-Assad from power. The mistaken airdrop could be used as an excuse to send in U.S. ground forces. But wait a minute. Why on earth would the U.S. government purposely give ISIS terrorists weapons? I mean, these are the same Muslim extremists who are going around beheading journalists and executing Christians right now. Do you mean to tell me the U.S. government is so corrupt, that they're so evil, that they would actually do something like that? Oh, yes, they would. And the evidence is overwhelming. In fact, the palette of weapons that has supposedly ended up in the wrong hands, what's really insignificant compared to the total ISIS arsenal. Not only does ISIS have in their possession tons of weaponry taken from the retreating Iraqi forces, but the terrorist army now has long-range artillery and thousands of automatic weapons, courtesy of the good old USA. Here's John McCain standing next to a known al-Qaeda leader. But I guess when he's standing next to John McCain, they call him a pro-democracy rebel. Now, you like that name? That sounds like something George Orwell would have come up with. Marcos, what's his real name?
It says his name is Abdel Hakim Belhaj. He's a known al-Qaeda leader. If you have any questions about whether or not the government's actually doing this, they have been. We send people in to destabilize the region and then turn them into an enemy that gets us in the region to take control.
Flat out, we do not have Census Bureau door-to-door survey fidelity on these groups. I wish we did, but we don't. There are, by one estimate rendered last year, some 1,600 of these opposition groups. So determining their size and capability and, importantly, their ideological or political leanings is very, very difficult.
About 400 U.S. troops and potentially hundreds of additional military personnel will deploy to Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar to help train vetted moderate Syrian rebels, train and equip them. This has been the next step in the program.
Moderate rebels are virtually non-existent in Syria. and have been for some time.
One of my core principles is that I will never engage in a politics in which I'm trying to divide people or make them less than me because they look different or have a different